I want to show you around the garden again and let you see everything that's changed. You can see I now have candy roasters growing. There's several in the bed on down through there, so if they all make it to maturity, that'll be more than enough for me to put up for the winter. The blackberries in this bed are also growing. That's really exciting. Even though I won't have berries this year, it's sure something to look forward to for next year. The Minnesota midgets in this bed are finally growing. I just stuck that one up there today to train it on the trellis, so the rest of them hopefully will soon join in with that. On further down in the bed is where I had the hearts of gold. They're not doing good at all. I don't know. You can see right here beside one of them is a watermelon, a sugar baby that I planted about 2 weeks ago, and it's already almost caught the ones that have been planted for a good 8 weeks. I've got some more little watermelons I planted about 2 weeks ago again, and you can see they're doing pretty good. That one's really big. So hopefully I'll have at least some little watermelons this year, even if none of my big ones make. Katie's nasturtiums and her calendula are blooming and doing well. We've been harvesting cilantro, rosemary, and basil out of our little herb bed and eating it. I have some dill planted that's barely come up. I don't know, hopefully it'll make it. And the oregano and sage is still doing good too. But the most lovely thing in the backyard by far is the arch. It's almost completely covered now. On the left side, more Minnesota midgets that are way ahead of the ones I just showed you. You can see at the end on the left is Bill Burnett's Chinese ochre. On the right is totally covered by cucumbers. These Minnesota midgets are really doing great. I've got a lot of little ones growing in different places. There's a little small little one you can see. There's others all the way down through there. My biggest one's hiding right down in there, if you can see it. But they're really doing great, and I hope that because they're growing up the trellis, that means I'm going to get to eat them this year instead of sharing them with the wild animals, which is usually what happens. I don't have any fruit yet on Bill Burnett's Chinese ochre, but I have a lot of yellow blooms. You can see some down there, so hopefully it's going to set fruit before long. And it's just growing like crazy. On the other side, the cucumbers, they're still doing good. They're going like gangbusters. There's a big long cucumber you can see. They're growing. It's probably the best cucumber harvest we've ever had, and I think it's because they're growing up something. We usually just let ours go where they will on the ground, and I don't think we'll ever do that again. The pepper plants are also doing good, setting fruit on them. Even the little puny one that I told you about or showed you last time, it's even growing, so it made it, it survived. We have jalapeno, these are all sweet peppers, but we have jalapenos back there in the back, which I don't even like. I don't like hot stuff, but Matt likes them. On this arch, the Malabar spinach is finally decided to take off, so it's grew all the way up to almost waist high, and I've been eating it pretty much every day for my lunch, and it's really tasty. It's something that I want to grow from now on. The other side's not doing as well, but it's growing, it's getting there. And Katie's wild apricot's growing up the arch as well. The tomatoes are just, gosh, they grow like inches overnight every night, setting lots of fruit. Some of the ones on the other side especially are almost as tall as I am, if not taller. I'm sure you can hear Bo. This is morning and he's letting the world know that he's here and everything's all right. That's his usual thing he does. These are the black cherries that we have still growing in the cages. I think we prefer, there's a bad leaf, prefer the cattle panels for sure. So next year I hope all of our tomatoes can be grown on the cattle panels. It's so easy to weave the tomato vines inside the panels and then to attach them as they go up, and it's just such a more sturdy way to grow them. We eat our first black cherries last night for supper and they were so good. There's lots of fruit on them. Pretty much everywhere you look. There's some little ones, some bigger ones. So they're really doing good, even though they've come out the top of the cages and kind of spilled over. It's typical for them though. They get really big every year. The apples are doing good. There's not that many of them, but the ones there are, they're doing really good. It's a beautiful morning in Brasstown. We desperately need rain though. It's funny, after all of our wet weather that I'm even saying that, but it's true. We need rain. The garden needs rain. At the end of this little asparagus bed is where I planted some pumpkins and the plum grannies and another cucumber and some marigolds back there in the back. I don't know if you can see this triangular shaped metal piece. I think that come from, it was a flower arrangement at Pap's funeral, but somehow it ended up at Granny's. She probably thought she would use it again someday and didn't. Anyway, I found it down at Granny's, so I brought it up here and put it there thinking that I would train that cucumber around it. But I haven't done that yet, and I really don't know if it's even sturdy enough to hold it up, but we'll find out, I guess. The little bed underneath the trellis we put up for the grapevines is just not doing anything. The Malabar spinach has barely come up. These are winter squash down here, and they should already be running and going crazy and producing fruit, and they're not. They're just, I don't know. I'm going to really have to think about what kind of soil's in there before next year if we use that again. The tomatoes in these cages are doing good too. They're setting fruit. I guess we're still about a week, maybe 2 weeks away from our first ripe big tomatoes. We've got lots of fruit, just none of them beginning to turn yet. Most of the tomatoes we've been enjoying are these little match cherry. They taste like candy. They're so good. That's mostly the ones we've been enjoying. And then with the black cherries, I told you we just started with those yesterday. The okra's growing, doing a good job, coming right up. I've had a few blooms, so in a week I should have at least a few pods of okra. The beans are really coming on. Even the ones down on this end that were so puny, they're beginning to climb and to bloom. The ones down here, it's just pretty much a wall of green beans now, you can see. See that one little vine reaching out? Before summer's end, it'll eventually, one will reach out on that end, on this side, and they'll hold hands. Or that's what Kenneth Roper, blind pig reader Kenneth Roper, he told me one time that the green beans were holding hands across the aisle. And so every time I see one like that, I always think about Kenneth. You can see some beans in the back in there. We picked our first mess of green beans over the weekend. There wasn't really enough for a cannon, so I split them with Granny. Granny's beans are way behind ours because hers met with an unfortunate run-in with a mama rabbit who pretty much mowed them down. We had to replant some of them, and then some of them just got stunted from all their leaves being eat off, and it took them a while to rebound. There's another holding hands in the aisle there, as Kenneth would say. I'll regret not doing something about that one, probably. My phlox is blooming. Phlox is just a wild flower that grows here, but over the years I started putting it in my garden and it's kind of took over, but it's beautiful. And it has I wish you could smell it. It's like a a spicy sweet scent, so kind of like dianthus, if you've ever grown dianthus or smelled it. And my whole yard in the afternoons when the sun hits it, it just perfumes the whole front yard. This little bean patch, this is the Kentucky Wonders and the Yount's beans. We've been eating off the Yount's beans, but the Kentucky Wonders, even though they've got lots of blooms, they've not had any beans yet. So hopefully that's coming. Here's some squash and zucchini plants that are just massive. And I see that there's some that needs to be picked on both of them. They're doing really good. I haven't had any squash bugs this year. Now as soon as I say that, look what I see. There's a squash bug. See it? There's a squash bug. As soon as I say that. So I'll have to be looking out for the squash bugs, apparently. There's some pretty zinnias growing in this area. My bean balm has just been beautiful. And as the name implies, it's covered in bees. They're everywhere. So this is the garden where I had the beets and the lettuce. I pulled all the beets up and canned them. The lettuce is mostly gone too. I pulled most of it up this week. I've let that one go to seed, but most of the others, and we had our last, probably what was our last dish of kale lettuce for the year. Right here in front I have some little winter squash coming on. It's a variety that I've never grown before. It stays pretty small, the fruits of it do, and they're supposed to keep really well though. Back here in the back I have some watermelon. You can see right there's one growing, and there's another one right there. I'm not sure if this is the rattlesnake variety or either it's Farmer Tim's variety. Farmer Tim lives down the road and he shared his seed with me. It's been passed down in his family for probably 100 years. And he has a lot of full sun where he's at, but he manages to grow enough watermelons to sell in his market. I can usually manage to maybe grow one to eat if I do that. And mine are never as big as his. I have some more little oakery plants right here. They're not as large as the others. I think they're getting shaded out by this massive squash. The onions are beginning to die back, so they'll need to be harvested before long. I don't have any small pumpkins yet, but I sure have been seeing the bees working them, so hopefully that's a good sign. More squash and cucumbers down here. I see some little baby cucumbers. This is the pumpkin. It's just going on. It's going to make its way down to Granny's before long, but it's the one I seen all the bees on yesterday, so hopefully I'll have a pumpkin before long. I did see one exciting thing yesterday down here. It was my first little butternut squash, so I'm very excited about that. The blueberries are still not ripe yet, but sometimes you can catch just a few turning ripe. So when that happens, I like to come down here and steal them and eat them for a blueberry snack. Now one bush of the earlier variety, it's turning quicker than the others. So you can see they're already turning pink. There's another ripe one. Probably the most impressive change since the last video is the zucchini and squash, these massive plants, which I love looking at because that reminds me the little winter squash that I just showed you. If I just give them a couple of weeks, they're gonna do their thing, and they're gonna be large and impressive too. And the other thing would be the green beans, the wall of green. They were barely little tiny plants, barely reaching the first rung in the last video, so now they've reached the top and doubled themselves back over pretty much. But they're an amazing thing. I love to look at the beans because I think of putting those beans in jars for the winter. There's just something about on a cold winter's day, opening a jar of green beans or a jar of tomatoes or whatever it is that you've put up, getting something out of the freezer, and you know that you started the seed, you nurtured the plant, you harvested the produce, and then you preserved it for your family. That's such an amazing thing. Now I know everyone can't grow a garden. People don't have land, other people are not able. But if you're able to put up your own food, it is a glorious feeling.